Hello and welcome back to my channel. As you may or may not know, I spent 8 months last year living in Auckland, New Zealand, and in October I moved to Sydney, Australia, where I am now. And today in this video I am going to compare the two cities and let you know, in my opinion, which one comes out on top. Juicy. Right, let's not muck about. Let's get going. I have decided to tackle this from 7 different angles. We have the cost of living, the atmosphere and vibe, nature, city, people, food, and weather. So let's get into the first topic, cost of living. First of all, the biggest cost in terms of living generally for most people is rent. Rent in Sydney is really expensive. Rent in Auckland was much cheaper. To give you a comparison, living in a 1-bed flat, in Auckland I was paying, I think, just over $1,000 a month. In Sydney I am paying $1,400 a month. And to reference that in pounds for anyone watching from the UK, we're talking £500 a month in Auckland and more like $800 a month in Sydney. So it is quite a big difference. Next up in the cost of living, we're talking food, supermarkets. Supermarkets are actually cheaper in Sydney than they were in New Zealand. New Zealand prices for supermarkets are out of this world. The only thing that differs there, and actually this isn't available in the supermarkets in Australia anyway, but it was in New Zealand, is alcohol. Alcohol is definitely more expensive in Australia than it was in New Zealand. So if you're a sober person, you're in luck. The food is much cheaper here in Australia. If you like your drink, you're possibly gonna have a much cheaper time if you're in New Zealand. Outside of that, I'd say the restaurants are very comparable. They're quite a similar kind of price here and in New Zealand. There are also a ton of free things to do in both Auckland and Sydney, so that makes activities and doing things on the weekend really accessible for everybody. So overall, most things are similar in cost, but with rent being quite significantly higher in Sydney just because it is so intensely competitive, I think Sydney probably tips slightly over New Zealand in costs. And if you're interested in the cost of living in Auckland specifically, there's a video linked in my description that details all of my ingoings and outgoings for 1 whole month. So you can open that in a new tab now and watch it after this one. I will be doing a video just like that for Australia too in the next couple of months. Okay, moving on to the vibe. Sydney's vibe is, these are the 4 words I've come up with: fun, I forgot the next one, healthy, active, and energetic. That's what I feel from Sydney. That's the kind of vibe that I get. I think the sunshine helps a lot in that, bearing in mind I have only been here in like the summer months. Everybody's up at 6 AM heading to the gym. There's a lot of sunrise swims and kayaks and yoga, but then there is also the other side where there's drinking and partying and dinners, a whole array of fun and sun and activeness. Whereas Auckland, on the kind of the other end of the spectrum, is actually more quiet, chilled, and this isn't a vibe, but nature. How do I make natural? Nature-esque, who knows? And I'm really sorry to any Kiwis watching this or people slightly protective of Auckland. I would say Auckland as a city maybe lacks a bit of a vibe, lacks a bit of atmosphere. And I think that's mostly because most people in Auckland, in their spare time when they're not actually working in the city, are out in the countryside hiking, camping, fishing. They're out in nature and they're not within the city. So outside of working, there isn't kind of a lot going on there, whereas in Sydney there's a lot more going on in the city. It's kind of like Sydney is city life with like a little sprinkling of nature, and Auckland is nature life with a kind of tiny little sprinkling of city. That's how I would describe it. And that brings us perfectly on to point 3, which is nature. So I have to start by saying the access to nature in Auckland is amazing. There are so many places literally on your doorstep to go, with waterfalls, volcanoes, amazing beautiful long beaches, and all of it is pretty untouched. Whereas Sydney does have some of these things, or it has a lot of these things, but they won't be so untouched, or at least you'd have to kind of travel a bit further afield to find them. Hi, just me interrupting myself. If you're still watching this video, please click the thumbs up below. It really helps me spread the video far and wide. Next up, we are talking city, and when I say city, what I'm talking about is like what they call over here like the CBD, the main actual city area with all the high rises. And I've got to say that Sydney in this category definitely tops the tip-top peak. What's it called? Tops it off. No, pips. Sydney pips Auckland to the prize. Whatever I'm trying to say, pretend that I said it, okay? The city centre in Sydney has far more interesting architecture, statues, history. The shops look impressive, the shopping centres are impressive. There are some nice old theatres, there's character to the buildings, whereas Auckland just doesn't have as much of that. There's a few bits here and there, but nothing that I felt was particularly spectacular about Auckland. Felt like a little bit of a dated town without much history. I kind of slated Auckland there, but it just doesn't have the same va-va-voom, let's say. Auckland CBD is nothing to write home about. Next, we are talking about people. People. Now, please, if you are Sydneyan or Kiwi, Aucklandian, please don't take this personally. It's not directed at you. It's just people in general. Now, first of all, we have to go into the population sizes. There are probably more people actually in Sydney than there are in the whole of New Zealand. I don't know if that's factually correct, but I know that there are definitely more people in the city of London than there are in New Zealand. So it goes without saying you'll obviously come across more people in your day-to-day when you're in Sydney versus when you're in Auckland. I haven't really had any bad experiences. I feel like people in both places are willing to help. They're eager to welcome you to their country. There's generally a nice vibe. I would say in Auckland, maybe people are a little bit more forwardly open and friendly, a bit like in a village in the UK. Like you go for a walk and someone walks past and they say, "Hi, how you doing?" In New Zealand, I haven't so much found that in Sydney. It's a little bit more, we're in a city and we don't talk to each other when we cross paths, even if we're on like a countryside walk. But outside of that, I would say Australians are potentially more up for a good laugh than the Kiwis. But overall, I have to say the people in general in both Auckland and Sydney have been absolutely lovely, very welcoming, and I hope that that is also proven in the comments on this video. Let's see. Okay, we have two categories left. The first one is food. For me, this can make or break a country, if I'm honest with you. They really can. First point we have to stick in there. Both cities have a lot of Asian food culture, which for me, big thumbs up. Fantastic, well done everybody. I love Asian food. Ooh, Thai food is without a doubt the best food in the world. I mean, India is in competition, but I just feel like Thai it just pips it to the post, because you can eat more Thai. You could eat Thai every day for a year if you had to. Indian would be quite difficult to eat every day for a year unless you grew up eating Indian food every day, because it's quite intense. Thai is a little bit more easygoing. Anyway, why am I going on about Thai and Indian food? The Asian food scene here is fantastic. East Asia, Thailand, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, all of those delicious cuisines can be found right here, and they're fantastic. In terms of the kind of typical food of the country, what stands out to me from New Zealand was like pies and fish and chips, interestingly, and definitely a sausage roll, although it always had fennel in it and I don't like fennel, but you know, a sausage roll, pies, fish and chips. And then in Sydney, funnily enough, chicken schnitzel is a big one here. I'd also say I'm quite surprised at how much pasta there is everywhere. They love their pasta in Sydney. And then brunch seems to be such a massive thing here. Generally, I would say the food is fab in both cities, to be honest. Plus, it's really great that it's quite affordable to go out to restaurants, even though the supermarket's quite expensive. It feels, in comparison to the UK, it feels more affordable to go out for dinner and get takeaways and things. Maybe not takeaways, but going out for dinner. But I'm gonna do it. I think Sydney slightly edges it on the food front for me. I just think they have slightly more interesting menus, slightly more diverse stuff, and the food is just that much better. It's just like, I haven't had a bad meal here. It's all delicious. The chefs that live in Sydney are just, they're on another level. Okay, we are on to the last category, and then we're going to crown the winner. We are talking weather. Oh God, okay. Oh God, I hate to say it. I hate to do this. I mean, I think you all know exactly what I'm going to say anyway. Sydney wins. Sydney wins in the weather department. Not overall. Okay, we haven't got there yet. Sydney wins in the weather department. I can't, there's no competition. I mean, Auckland is just rainier, greyer, colder, less reliable. That's what I would say. Not to say Auckland is rainy, grey, cold and unreliable, but Sydney is just a bit sunnier, a bit more reliable weather. Even when it's kind of a rainy day, it's not cold, it's warm. So I have to say Sydney pips it to the post. That's the phrase. That is the phrase I was trying to remember earlier. Sydney just pips Auckland to the post. And now I know people from Auckland are going to be saying, yeah, but last year's weather in Auckland was particularly terrible. And I do understand that. I do. I get it. But I'm sorry, you cannot argue that Auckland's weather is better than Sydney's. Unfortunately not. Unless you are a fan of rain and cloud. Right, that's it. We've covered all 6 categories. Was it 6 or 7? 7 categories, and it is time for me to crown the winner of Kat's Best City in the Australasian City Awards 2024. The nominees are Auckland and Sydney, and the winner is, drumroll please, you guessed it, it's Sydney. Now, before you start shouting at me in the comments, this is only my opinion. This is based on what I like to get out of a city or a place that I'm living in. If you are a big nature lover and there's nothing you love more than a good hike or getting out to an empty beach on a weekend, then Auckland is your winner by far. For me, I want sunshine, I want a beach with lots of people around me so I can people watch and feel the good vibes, and that is what gives me energy and makes me enjoy a place. The most important things for me are vibe and atmosphere, which Sydney wins in, food, which Sydney only just but does win in, and weather. The Sydney sun, you just can't beat it. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I know that over 95% of people who watch my videos are not actually subscribed. So if you are one of the 95%, why not subscribe? As always, I will see you next week with another video. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your week and goodbye.